My first question to all of the panelists is this. As my colleague and friend John Volk taught me everything I know about strategic planning, and it burns in my brain, and it's followed me around ever since. And that would be to say, in light of all of this, harnessing the opinions and these conversations, what is the end game? What is it that we're trying to achieve as an industry, as groups that are looking at food and agriculture together? What's the goal?
Just take a shot. I would say from our standpoint, what we want is a sort of a fair, balanced dialogue on food and agriculture where consumers can make informed choices. I think a lot of times consumers make choices with information that we know is not the best information for them to make basis from. But once the consumer is well informed and makes the choice, that truly is up to them, and that's our free society, that they have the right to do that. But I think our goal should be to make sure that's an informed choice.
So my basic end game is just to keep my job and continue working as a journalist. But from the point of view in terms of getting your point across, I think that the timber industry in the Northwest would be a good lead to follow. In the Northwest, logging has been an issue for 40 years now, and they've seen a real improvement in attitudes in the public towards logging, towards the timber industry, and a large part of that is just the repetition of not whitewashing things or greenwashing them, just saying, hey, this is what we do. We cut down the trees so we can have jobs and build houses that you live in. Then we replant them. We're regulated by the government to have a certain size of clear cut, and then we're also regulated that we can't cut too large of clear cuts until the trees grow around them. And I mean, they repeat that often enough, and people go, hey, they're not evil trying to turn everything into, the landscape of the moon. There's a reason for this industry. And I don't remember the exact statistics, but in the Northwest, I mean, generally, the positive attitudes are much more positive now towards logging than they were 30 years ago. I mean, granted, it's taken a long time, but repetition is key.
Yeah, I would support actually what both have said. I want people to understand what the potential benefits of something is, what the potential risks are, what we know and what we don't know, because it could be that the information is so limited that we don't know how to address, or we have don't have adequate studies on what risks might be. Then we share that. Everybody makes a decision based upon their personal values, and we might decide something differently, and we have that right, but we need to know what the situation is. So I want to tell them what the situation is. Maybe they don't want to have talk about it a lot. Then we can put it on a web address so those who want lots of information can get lots of information, and those who just want the top line major summaries, we can give them that as well.
And I'll be bold. Whoa! And I'm going to go before Ken and let my new friend Ken go last. How's that? No, all kidding aside, the discussion that's been on the floor here today comes back to what I was trying to reference in my opening comments about why the U.S. Farmers and Ranchers Alliance came together. If I heard it once, I heard it a million times that, well, there's no way on the face of this earth all of agriculture is going to be able to come together and agree on anything. And I'm here to say that, yes, that was a theory that we have proven wrong. Why? Because if we don't, all of you young people out here in this audience are not going to have any opportunity to follow in the footsteps. So that's the first point, that yes, we can find a whole lot more common ground than what we think if we back up and look at this objectively and not emotionally. The second point is the end goal is about enhancing consumer trust, because every data point that you will hear suggests that we got some room to grow. We've got some room for improvement, but there is such a staunch commitment in all of agriculture to continually improve what you do each and every day, what we do each and every day, because that's the way we remain sustainable as an industry and as any commodity or any business that's affiliated with the supply chain of all of agriculture. I guess, and the last point that I would make is that there's all of this discussion about what we're trying to do. There's debates about good food versus bad food. And the end goal is to not get into that mudslinging contest, but to rather focus on the real story that we are producing healthy choices for everyone, period.
Well, I agree with a lot of what's been said. I think our goal, Ann, is to address some of what we think are the unintended consequences of agricultural production technology. We're an environmental organization. Our top priority in the Farm Bill is the food stamp program. The notion that we have 45 million people now in this country who are in that program, that the program is being demonized, even though a lot of the people in there have only recently come in because of the downturn in the economy, and half of them are kids. That's something I want to make sure that we attend to as a public policy issue. And then finally, I really think it's important that we have a dialogue with farmers and have an understanding that there is a difference between farmers and the public's regard for them, and exactly as you put it, questions about how food is grown, because that involves a lot more industries. I mean, just to give you one more example why I think the iPhone metaphor helped me so much, farmers are like the iPhone consumers, not like Apple. And when that iPhone didn't work, all but maybe some of the really crazy Apple types in the consumer world defended it, but mostly they said, yeah, fix it. And you don't see that enough in agriculture. Why aren't farmers complaining more about the weed resistance problems and the insect resistance problems they were told weren't going to happen? Why aren't farmers complaining more that they were told for decades that the chemicals they were using wouldn't show up in drinking water? And now people are concerned about that. Why is that the case? So my view is part of listening to what consumers say, really listening, and what environmentalists say, is that you have to acknowledge that there's these big industries that are producing these tools, and we're not talking about Phillips screwdrivers here that you can use forever. So these are tools that need to come and go because they've outlived their usefulness and their time. Instead of defending the tools, defend agriculture. And I know it's difficult sometimes to separate those things, but I would like to see more dialogue where that happens. And then I just have to respond quickly to the notion of left versus right. We're often asked if we're a liberal outfit, the Environmental Working Group, and I have to say that we are liberal. If you define it on the basis of the classical definition, the classical terms, is the degree to which you think the government should have a role in the economy, a role in our political life. So we are liberal. We're just not as liberal as the average Republican member of the House Agriculture Committee.
Question over here. They got behind you right now. Next, move it up there. Okay, sir.
Yes. If we assume the consumer is king and we allow organic food to be labeled separately, even though we probably recognize there's no nutritional difference, why not allow GMO or non-GMO labeling? Let the consumer decide. If they're willing to pay a premium for a non-GMO product, then I'm sure we can produce that in American agriculture and make a profit.
I think that might be directed.
Feel free.
I think consumers who wish a non-GMO product are paying a premium in that if they choose organic, that is a product without genetic modification or grown without genetic modification. If consumers have never, I've not seen a survey where consumers were told the cost or the paperwork associated with something that was called non-genetic modification. Right now it's corn and soy primarily, and if you think of all the products that have corn and soy to some degree in them, I mean, they're extensive, but there's no identification. If there's corn oil, there's nothing about the part of the plant that was genetically modified that's in that oil. It just refers to how a product was produced. So, the U.S. government's policy is we make decisions based upon the characteristics of the product, its nutritional value, for example, or its potential toxicity, and not the method of production. And so that's been the philosophy that is inherent.
John.
So this may be directed at Forrest, but how can we get agriculture to be more focused on addressing some of its own issues in order to have a stronger story for consumers? And one of the issues that I've done some work on is E. coli. And Dr. Russell Cross at Texas A&M University says that for $1 a head, we can eliminate E. coli 0.5787. But the industry is not willing to spend that dollar. So why aren't cattle producers insisting that processors adopt technologies that will in fact eliminate that? And wouldn't that be a strong story to be able to tell consumers that we have worked to virtually eradicate that problem?
John, that's a very, very deep question, a very good question that from a beef perspective, and going back to your comment specifically about Dr. Russell Cross, there's no backup whatsoever with respect to the need to look at all solutions in a true solution mindset, meaning look at the issue with a systems approach to providing the solution. That's why we have been very engaged, and I'm speaking now just from a beef industry perspective, very focused within what we refer to as the Beef Industry Food Safety Council. That group will be meeting just here in about 3 weeks in Florida, and it will be the 10th anniversary. Why did it start? Well, it started because of the incident with Jack in the Box some 10 plus years ago, and the purpose of that was to come together, set aside differences within the different segments of the beef supply chain, and find solutions that can be implemented from pre-harvest all the way to post-harvest with the ultimate goal of removing this challenge to beef safety. And again, I'm being very specific to my answer because of your question being very specific to beef. There was a reference that was made earlier about one part of the systems approach in the solution of irradiation. And while there has been a lot of scientific evidence and support for that, there's a strong balancing act that has to be put on the table about consumer preference and or consumer view toward that part of the solution. But whether or not one agrees or disagrees with that, what the industry has done, I feel, is a very nice job. When you look at this issue globally, in this country, we've taken a very proactive, a very aggressive approach to managing the outcome as best we can with the whole systems approach. So there are some areas where you look at these technologies that are here today that are fully supported, that as long as they're backed by good science, that they are efficacious and they are put into a systems approach, they need to be used, and I think they will continue to be adopted as we move forward for the ultimate right reason, not for economic reason.
Got time for one more question from the audience, please. Raise them up. Oh, I saw them out there before. Okay, we got one right up front here. Just shout it out.